Welcome back to Gotham Trends for another deep dive.
Glad to be back.
Today we're going to be wading into some murky waters.
Ooh, fun.
The world of cybercrime.
Right.
Specifically how it intersects with something that I think everybody listening uses pretty frequently.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
we're not just talking about your average, everyday phishing scams.
No.
We're talking about what happens when the systems themselves go down.
Uh-oh.
And how the dark web is involved.
Interesting.
So have you ever been sitting there at your computer or, trying to use your banking app on your phone and you get that message like system error or, we're down for maintenance?
Yeah, all the time.
Ever wonder if it's really just a glitch?
Sometimes, yeah.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah, it is kind of fascinating how a simple system error message can really send chills down your spine.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we trust banks with literally, our livelihoods.
Yeah.
So any disruption feels like a huge crack in the foundation.
Absolutely. It's more than just an inconvenience. It's about that feeling of vulnerability.
Definitely.
So let's start unpacking this a little bit. Our sources suggest that these outages can actually be a prime opportunity for cyber criminals who are lurking on the dark web.
Uh-huh.
And we're not just talking about, some random hacker in their basement. We're talking about organized groups.
Right.
So what are we looking at here when we talk about this kind of activity?
So if you can imagine the dark web as this kind of digital black market,
Okay.
this is where things like ransomware kits are bought and sold. It's software as a service,
Wow.
but twisted.
Oh, okay.
So these aren't just lone wolves anymore. These are really sophisticated operations with a lot of money behind them. So when a bank gets hit with ransomware, they often have to shut down all their systems
Right.
just to try and contain the damage.
Uh-huh.
So boom, outage.
Okay, so it's not always a glitch.
Not always, no?
Sometimes it's an intentional attack.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting.
Yeah.
But how do they actually exploit the chaos of the outage?
Well, think about it. Everybody's panicking, right?
Sure.
If your bank is down, you're desperate for information.
Yeah, of course.
That makes us prime targets for things like phishing scams.
Yeah.
So you might get an email that looks exactly like it's from your bank saying, oh, we're experiencing some issues. Please click here to verify your account.
Oh, no.
You click that link, bam, your credentials are gone.
Oh, man, my heart rate's going up a little bit just thinking about that.
Right.
So we're talking stolen logins, maybe even access to accounts. Is that the main goal during an outage?
It's a big one for sure, but there's more.
Oh, no.
Data breaches are a huge concern, too.
Right.
Because banks store so much information about us, social security numbers, account details, everything.
All there.
Right.
Yeah.
So an outage, even if it's legitimate, could be used as this smoke screen
Oh, wow.
to cover up an ongoing data exfiltration.
Okay.
So while everybody's focused on oh, when are we going to get back online?
Yeah.
The criminals are quietly siphoning information in the background.
That's chilling, using the distraction to pull off a heist.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any real-world examples of this actually happening?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
You remember the Bangladesh bank heist back in 2016?
I think I remember hearing something about that.
Yeah, hackers almost got away with $1 billion.
Wow.
Later, stolen credentials and hacking tools were found on dark web forums.
Oh.
Linked to a North Korean group.
No way.
Yeah.
So this stuff is real and the stakes are really high.
Very real, very high.
Okay, so it can't be easy to tell if an outage is legitimate or if it's a cover-up.
Right.
What should we be looking out for?
It's tough, but there are some red flags.
Okay.
If an outage happens at the same time as a bunch of other reported cyber attacks,
Okay.
that's suspicious.
Makes sense.
Also, if the bank is really slow or vague in their communication, it might mean they're still trying to figure out what hit them.
So pay attention to how the bank is acting, not just what they're saying.
Exactly.
But what about us, the everyday folks caught in the middle of this?
Right.
What can we actually do to protect ourselves, especially when things go down?
Well, first of all, don't panic.
Easier said than done when your money's on the line.
I know, but panicking is what makes you vulnerable.
Right.
Don't click any links in emails or texts.
Okay.
No matter how official they look.
Even if it seems like they're trying to help.
Exactly. Go straight to the bank's official website or app for information.
Okay.
And be extra cautious about giving out any personal info.
Right.
Remember, the bank already has it.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be asking you to verify everything again during an outage.
So trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Absolutely. And report anything suspicious immediately.
Okay.
Better safe than sorry, right?
Right. So we've established that banks are prime targets,
Right.
outages are opportunities,
Hmm.
and we need to be extra cautious. But banks can't just be sitting ducks, right?
Of course not.
What are they doing to fight back against this dark web threat?
Well, they're certainly not passive. It's
Okay.
become a constant arms race, a game of cat and mouse with the cyber criminals.
Uh-huh.
One of their key strategies is dark web monitoring.
Dark web monitoring.
Yeah.
So they're like going into the dark web themselves.
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
They hire cybersecurity firms that specialize in this.
Mhm.
These firms scan the dark web for any mention of the bank. Their systems, customer data, anything that could signal a threat.
So they're looking for things like stolen credentials being sold or chatter about planning an attack.
Exactly. They can even detect phishing kits designed to target their customers.
Wow. So it's like having a spy behind enemy lines.
Pretty much.
That's incredible. So what happens when they find something?
Well, it depends on the threat.
Okay.
They might alert customers to be on high alert or strengthen their security measures,
Hmm.
or even work with law enforcement to shut down the operation.
Wow. It sounds like a high-stakes game of intelligence.
It is.
So what else are they doing to stay ahead of these cyber criminals?
Well, they're also utilizing the power of AI.
AI. Oh,
Yeah, things like behavioral analytics.
okay.
These AI systems analyze customer behavior looking for anything out of the ordinary.
Okay, so like if I suddenly start making transactions from, a different country
Mm-hmm.
or withdraw like a huge sum of money,
Mm-hmm.
that would trigger some alarm bells.
Precisely, the AI can spot those subtle shifts in behavior that might indicate an account has been compromised.
So it's like having a digital guardian angel watching over your finances.
Exactly.
It's pretty reassuring. Are there any other tactics that they're using?
Well, there's the interesting approach of bug bounty programs.
Bug bounty programs.
Yeah, that's that.
So they invite ethical hackers to try and find vulnerabilities in their systems.
So they're basically saying, like, come hack us, but tell us how you did it.
Exactly. It's a controlled environment where they can identify and fix weaknesses before the bad guys can exploit them.
The ethical hackers get a reward for finding bugs,
Mm-hmm.
and the bank gets to improve their security.
It's a clever strategy,
Mhm.
but is it really effective?
Well, it's not a foolproof solution,
Sure.
but it does help to expose vulnerabilities that might have been missed otherwise.
Okay.
It's all about being proactive, right?
Right. So they're being proactive, using AI, even inviting hackers to test their defenses.
Yeah.
Anything else they're doing to protect our data?
Of course, there are the more traditional methods like encryption,
Right.
which scrambles data to make it unreadable without the key,
Hmm.
and tokenization.
I've heard of encryption, but what's tokenization?
It's a clever way to protect sensitive information like your credit card number.
Okay.
So instead of storing your actual number, they replace it with a random temporary token.
So even if someone steals that token, it's useless because it doesn't link back to my real account?
Exactly. It adds an extra layer of security, making it harder for criminals to profit from stolen data.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All of this sounds pretty impressive. It seems like banks are really stepping up their game in this digital arms race.
They have to.
Yeah,
The cyber criminals are constantly evolving, so there's no room for complacency.
right.
It's a continuous battle to stay one step ahead.
So it's not just up to the banks to protect us.
Right.
We have a
Yeah.
role to play too,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. We all need to be informed, vigilant, and proactive in protecting ourselves.
Yeah,
Knowledge is power in this digital age.
definitely.
And it's not just the banks fighting this battle. Governments are also stepping in to try and combat this dark web activity.
That's right. They have a really big role to play. What are they doing to address this?
Well, one key area is regulatory oversight. They're enforcing much stricter cybersecurity standards for banks.
So it's about like setting a baseline for security, making sure everyone is meeting certain requirements.
Exactly. Things like requiring strong authentication for customers and regular security testing.
Yeah.
It's all about holding banks accountable for protecting our data.
Makes sense. It's like raising the bar for everyone. But it's not just about prevention, right?
Right.
What about actually like going after the criminals who are operating on the dark web?
Oh, absolutely. Law enforcement agencies like the FBI and Interpol have dedicated cybercrime units that are specifically targeting these dark web marketplaces.
So they're actively trying to infiltrate these networks and like bring down the people behind them.
Precisely. They're working to disrupt these criminal networks, track down the perpetrators, and bring them to justice. It's a constant game of cat and mouse.
It sounds like they're taking this threat very seriously, but it can't be easy to track these criminals down.
Right.
The dark web is designed for anonymity.
It is. But law enforcement agencies are developing some pretty sophisticated techniques to identify and track these individuals.
Okay.
They're using things like network analysis and undercover operations.
So it's like a digital detective story.
Kind of.
But it's not just about catching the bad guys after the fact. What are they doing to prevent these attacks in the first place?
Well, one approach is sanctioning known dark web operators, freezing their assets and restricting their travel.
So they're trying to cut off the financial incentives for cybercrime.
Exactly, make it less profitable.
Well,
and they're also focusing on addressing cryptocurrency abuse.
Okay.
A lot of illicit activities on the dark web are funded through cryptocurrencies
Right.
because of the perceived anonymity.
So it's like the digital equivalent of money laundering.
In a way, yes. So governments are introducing laws and regulations to increase transparency in cryptocurrency transactions,
Makes sense.
making it harder for criminals to hide their ill-gotten gains.
So it sounds like a multi-pronged approach. They're attacking this problem from all angles.
They are.
But it's not just about laws and regulations, is it?
Right.
What about advancements in cybersecurity itself?
Yeah.
Are there any new technologies or strategies that are emerging to combat these threats?
Absolutely. This is where things get really exciting. One of the most promising areas is artificial intelligence.
AI, like the stuff we see in sci-fi movies.
Well, not quite that advanced yet.
Okay.
But AI is playing an increasingly important role in cybersecurity. It can analyze massive amounts of data to detect and predict cyber attacks before they even happen.
Wow, so it's like having a super-powered security guard who can see the future.
In a sense, yes, there are systems out there that are using machine learning to adapt to evolving threats in real time. They can spot patterns and anomalies that humans would never be able to see.
So it's like having a digital immune system for our financial systems.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And then there's blockchain technology. You've probably heard of it in relation to cryptocurrencies, but it has huge potential for cybersecurity as well.
I've heard the term thrown around, but I'll admit I don't really understand how it works.
It's a bit complex, but the basic idea is that blockchain is a decentralized and tamper-proof way to record transactions.
Okay.
It's like a digital ledger that everyone can see, but no one can alter.
So if someone tries to change something, everyone would know.
Exactly. And because it's decentralized, there's no single point of failure that hackers can target. It's a much more resilient system than traditional databases.
That's fascinating. So blockchain could be a game changer for banking security.
It has the potential to be. And then we have quantum-resistant encryption. This is all about preparing for the future.
The future.
Yeah?
What do you mean?
Well, quantum computers are on the horizon, and they have the power to break our current encryption methods. That's a major threat to cybersecurity.
But we need a new kind of encryption that can withstand these quantum attacks.
Exactly. And thankfully, researchers are already developing quantum-resistant algorithms. It's all about staying ahead of the curve.
So it's like a never-ending race to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
It is, but it's a race we can't afford to lose. And then there are more familiar advancements like biometric security.
Like fingerprint scanning and facial recognition.
Exactly. These technologies are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they're being integrated into banking systems to enhance security.
So it's all about making it harder for unauthorized users to access our accounts.
Precisely. And banks are also using advanced threat simulation techniques.
Threat simulation, what's that all about?
They create virtual environments called cyber ranges where they can simulate cyber attacks and test their defenses.
So it's like a training ground for their cybersecurity teams.
Exactly. It allows them to identify weaknesses in their systems and practice their response protocols in a safe and controlled environment. It's an essential part of staying prepared.
It sounds like they're pulling out all the stops to protect us.
They are, but we can't forget about the human element in all of this. As advanced as these technologies are, they can't completely eliminate the risk of human error.
That's true. We've all clicked on a suspicious link or fallen for a phishing scam at some point.
Exactly. So we need to be smart about our own online behavior.
So things like using strong passwords, being wary of phishing scams, and keeping our software updated are still crucial.
Absolutely. It's a shared responsibility. We all need to play our part in staying safe online.
And speaking of playing our part, there's some really interesting emerging trends in cybersecurity education.
Oh, like what?
Well, banks are starting to use gamified platforms to teach customers about phishing and other threats.
Gamified platform.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
They're using interactive apps and games to make learning about cybersecurity more engaging and accessible.
That's a great way to reach a wider audience, especially those who might not be interested in traditional cybersecurity training.
Exactly. It's about empowering people with knowledge not just scaring them with warnings.
And we're also seeing a lot of innovation in cloud security.
Which makes sense. So much of our data is stored in the cloud these days.
Right, cloud providers are developing industry-specific security tools that are tailored for financial institutions. They're constantly improving their defenses to keep pace with the evolving threat landscape.
It's reassuring to know that they're taking it seriously.
They have to. And then there's the issue of data sovereignty and localization.
Data sovereignty and localization. I'm not familiar with those terms.
Well, different countries have different regulations about how data can be stored and accessed.
So it's about complying with international laws.
Exactly. Banks are adopting localized data storage practices to ensure they're meeting all the requirements. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole cybersecurity challenge.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It can be, but it's essential for maintaining trust and compliance. And finally, we're seeing the rise of global cybersecurity alliances.
So different countries working together to combat cybercrime.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that this is a global threat that requires a global response. We're stronger when we work together.
It's inspiring to see that kind of collaboration happening.
It is. It gives me hope for the future of cybersecurity.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's clear that this is a complex and constantly evolving issue, but it's also clear that there are a lot of smart people working hard to protect us.
And that's the key takeaway. We're not powerless in the face of these threats. We can all play a role in staying safe online.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the dark web to cutting-edge cybersecurity. But before we wrap up, I want to get back to those banking outages for a moment. We talked about how they can be opportunities for cyber criminals, but what about the impact on us, the customers?
That's a crucial point. It's easy to get caught up in the technical details, but we have to remember that real people are affected by these outages.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that human impact sometimes when we're talking about all these, complex technical systems.
Right.
But these outages have real-world consequences for people.
It's more than just an inconvenience. It can be super stressful and disruptive.
Absolutely. Imagine you're trying to pay your bills or buy groceries or even just access your savings,
Yeah.
and you suddenly can't because your bank systems are down.
Yeah, it's like a feeling of helplessness, like you're cut off from your own money.
Exactly. And it can have serious consequences.
Right.
People might miss payments or incur late fees or even bounce checks.
Yeah, it creates this like ripple effect of financial problems.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And then there's the emotional impact too.
Oh, yeah.
People get anxious, frustrated, even angry when they can't access their accounts.
It's like a breach of trust.
Right.
We rely on these institutions to keep our money safe and accessible, and when they fail to do that, it can be really unsettling.
It is. And even if an outage isn't caused by a cyber attack, it can still raise concerns about security.
Right. People might worry that their data has been compromised, even if it hasn't.
That's understandable. And unfortunately, cyber criminals often exploit that fear and uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
They prey on people who are already feeling vulnerable.
So they might send those phishing emails or texts that we were talking about before.
Exactly. They might try to make it look like it's from the bank, trying to trick people into giving up their login credentials.
So it's important to be extra vigilant during an outage.
Absolutely. Don't click on any links or open any attachments from unsolicited emails or texts.
Right.
And if you're unsure about anything, contact your bank directly through their official channels.
Okay, that's good advice. So what can banks do to mitigate the impact of these outages on their customers?
Well, first and foremost, they need to communicate clearly and transparently.
Right.
People need to know what's happening, why it's happening, and when they can expect things to be back to normal.
So regular updates via email or text or social media.
Exactly. All of that can go a long way in reducing anxiety and frustration.
It's about acknowledging the inconvenience and showing that they're working to resolve the issue.
Right. And they also need to be empathetic.
Oh, yeah.
People are going to be upset, so it's important to acknowledge their feelings and offer support.
Yeah, it's about going beyond those technical explanations and connecting with customers on a human level.
Exactly. And then there's the practical side of things.
Right.
Banks should provide alternative ways for customers to access their money or services during an outage.
So what kinds of things?
Well, they could partner with other banks or payment platforms to allow temporary access to funds.
Okay.
Or they could extend branch hours or offer mobile banking options.
So it's about finding those creative solutions to minimize the disruption.
Exactly. And they should also consider offering fee waivers or other goodwill gestures to compensate customers for the inconvenience.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It shows that they're taking responsibility and valuing their customers.
It does. And in the long run, it can help to rebuild trust.
Because trust is so essential in that banking relationship.
It's the foundation of everything. And when that trust is broken, it can be very difficult to repair.
So banks need to take these outages seriously,
Yeah.
not just from a technical perspective,
Yeah.
but also from a customer service perspective.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that outages have real-world consequences for real people.
So we've talked about the role of banks, the role of governments, and even the role of technology. But what about us, the individuals?
Right.
What can we do to protect ourselves from dark, web-fueled financial fraud, especially during a banking outage?
That's the most important question of all because ultimately our own actions play a huge role in our online security.
So it's about taking ownership of our digital lives.
Exactly. And there are some simple but effective steps that we can all take first and foremost. Be proactive.
Yeah.
Don't wait for something bad to happen before you start thinking about security.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, set up alerts for account activity, and balances this way. You'll know immediately if there's any unusual activity, like an unexpected withdrawal or a suspicious login.
Well, that's a good idea. It's like having an early warning system in place.
Exactly. And consider keeping a backup emergency fund in a separate bank that way. If one bank experiences an outage, you'll still have access to some of your money.
It's all about diversifying your risk.
Precisely. And of course, stay informed. Follow your bank's official social media channels for updates during outages.
Right, so we're not relying on rumors or speculation.
Right. Get your information from the source and be very wary of phishing scams, especially during times of uncertainty. Verify any communications that seem suspicious by contacting your bank directly.
So don't click on any links or open any attachments unless you're absolutely sure they're legitimate.
Exactly. And it's always a good idea to have a backup plan in place, carry some cash, or use alternative payment methods like prepaid cards or digital wallets so you're not completely reliant on your bank during an outage.
That's a good point. It's all about being prepared for the unexpected.
It is. And remember, if something feels off, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to question things or report any suspicious activity to your bank.
Better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. And the more we all do our part to stay informed and vigilant, the safer we'll all be.
Well, I think this has been a really valuable deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but the main takeaway for me is that knowledge is power.
I agree. The more we understand about the threats, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
And it's not about being afraid, it's about being empowered.
Right.
We can take steps to protect ourselves, and we can work together to create a safer digital world.
That's a great way to put it. Empowerment, not fear, should be our guiding principle.
I love that. So, listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge.
Okay, I like this.
Think of it as a thought experiment, a way to put all of this knowledge that we've talked about today into action.
Right.
Imagine that you are a cyber criminal lurking in the shadows of the dark web,
Ooh, spooky.
and a major bank just experienced a widespread outage.
Oh.
What's your next move?
Interesting question.
How would you exploit the chaos?
Right.
What weaknesses would you target?
Yeah.
What kind of scam would you cook up?
It's a really good exercise to try and think like the bad guys.
Yeah.
Because understanding their mindset is the best way to anticipate and defend against their tactics.
By putting ourselves in their shoes, we can better understand the potential threats and vulnerabilities out there.
We can start to see the world through their eyes, anticipate their moves, and build stronger defenses.
So, listeners, I challenge you to put on your metaphorical black hat. Think like a cyber criminal. It might just be the best way to protect yourself in this digital age.
And remember, every time you outsmart a potential threat, you're making the digital world a little bit safer for everyone.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on Gotham Trends for this deep dive into the dark side of banking.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful explorations of the trends shaping our world. And as always, be sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts on this episode. We love hearing from you. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and stay ahead of the trends.